All right, so we're back here with the iWealth podcast and joined by Mr. Brad Connors. So, Brad, one part of me is like, as I get older, I'm almost 40 now, right? I want to be, conservative in my investing, right? And then another part of me still has the young man scenario, and I want to be like wildly aggressive.
Right.
Where do I get to? Because it's like a yin and yang of my personality, right? Where do I get to push that really aggressive part when it comes to the investing part of my world? Or how do I scratch that itch?
Right, yeah. Well, Gary Vee, you and I both listen to Gary Vee, and he's like, if I could only tell that 22-year-old how good I feel at the age of 40, right? That I still think I can compete in a race with them and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So getting back to your question, there are some areas that you can do it. And it just depends on your level of risk, that your tolerance, right? At 40, you can still take on a pretty decent level. But let's say you want to be like really aggressive.
Yeah.
Where should you do it at? Roth IRAs all day long. Like if you can fund a Roth IRA and stick $6,000 in it, remember that thing is never taxed. And you can give it to your kids or your spouse tax-free as well. So you put $6,000 in, it should be your most aggressive bucket of money that you have, because it's probably the last amount of money you're going to spend. Most of my clients the last 25 years that have Roth IRAs, we don't touch. I mean, if they get in a pinch and they needed to take 50 grand in tax brackets and all that, we'll play with it. But most of them don't touch their Roths because it's going to get given to their kid. Yep. And it's also their most aggressive bucket because they're not going to touch. They have longevity on their side. Another bucket is an HSA, so health savings account.
Okay.
That bucket is tax-free forever for medical expenses. So someday down the road, you'll have medical expenses. Let's say you're 40, and you're going to just grow that health savings account so that you've got this pile of money to use tax-free for medical expenses when you get to be between the ages of 60 and 80.
Sure.
So the next 20 years, be aggressive with that account, because you can't touch it anyway. You can, but you're not intending on touching it for 20 years. So, if it's individual stocks or ETFs or stock-based mutual funds or whatever, be aggressive in the health savings account and Roth IRA. Why? They're tax-free. That's exactly why. So that's where you can scratch that itch. I'm being more aggressive.
In a little way too, it's kind of like when you're married, that you can tell your wife, well, that money, we need to be aggressive with it because it's for our health later on. Let's invest that aggressively. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, yes, if I finally get this itch all scratched.
Well, and I had this happen to me, and this is why we have iBuckets that we call, where we're basically go back to like a Dave Ramsey and how you do an envelope and you equate your intention. Yeah. Same thing with the iBuckets, meaning that you invest your money based upon the risk and when it's going to happen. And so if this envelope is for 20 years from now, you should be more aggressive than the one that you're going to take your anniversary trip on or whatever. And so my point I was getting to, I had a couple once that this was back in the 2000 where the market went down, that wouldn't go on their 50th, not the lady, but he wouldn't go on their 50th anniversary to Alaska because the stock market was down and the market was down. Shame on me for not having that parked in a conservative envelope or bucket, right? And so these envelopes we're talking about, or buckets we're talking about, if it's a Roth and it's an HSA or longer term and they're tax-free, should be your two most aggressive buckets that you have.
That's totally interesting. And if you're like me and you got a little itch to do something a little crazy, buy a little Zoom stock or whatever the hot stock of the day is, that's a good way to do it.
Yep.
Very cool. Bet. Well, thank you so much, and we'll see you back here next time.
All right.